weightlifters, this is Weed, going with a new process here of trying to record this in my office and then sending it out to you. If you go to the webpage, you will find a link to Major T's 44 best bodyweight exercises, and they are certainly not requirements. Many of them are challenging, and as you can see, Major T has some serious triceps. This is a plank flash off of the floor, which is very challenging. Number one, to press yourself up, and number two, to have the core strength to keep your legs extended. You can watch that and see if you have any ideas and inspiration. So last time we were talking about the different types of grips and how that changes the exercise and also the muscle activation. And we talked a little bit about spotting and how to do that safely for free weight exercises, and look at the different areas of an Olympic bar. And on the webpage for that presentation, there will be that presentation, there will be an actual video for that, and then there's also some other videos as well. So talking about concepts to internalize is the essence of your being. So right now, what is your level of confidence with expectations and materials for weight training this semester? And there are some options if you check out the Nearpod on the Nearpod announcement. You can answer that. This is Fitts and Posner, who are some motor behaviorists, motor learning. So they talk about when you're learning a new skill, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we go through cycle 2, day 1, and talk about the hard stuff, kettlebell swings, or their ankle bags. But you can see this first one right here where it says cognitive. Movements are slow, inconsistent, and efficient. Considerable cognitive activity is required. So what that means is we have this thing called attentional demands, which are finite and limited. And when you're learning a new skill, you have to use a lot of your brain power, that those attentional demands, to try to figure out what you were doing. That's why many of you, the first time you did the deadlift after the hip hinge assessment, you really had to think about all those cues. But once you learn how to do it correctly, instant, and you know chest out, shoulders back, hip, heel, together, knees out, tummy tight, back flat, then you don't have to worry about the technique. You can think about the effort that you're doing. But it's very difficult. That's like when you learn how to drive. At first it was sloppy and you took forever to make a decision. But now, hopefully, you have become autonomous. So it's cognitive, associative, and autonomous. Autonomous is the highest level that we can reach for some activities, not everything, where we do it without thinking. And it just comes naturally. So that's good. The bad news is people think that because they're driving as autonomous that they can text on the phone. So when you're texting, you're focusing all of your attention on the phone, which leads to accidents, death, and horrible things. So the objectives today: identify the benefits of a comprehensive weight training or resistance training program, recognize and internalize the practice of concept safety, and determine various sources of resistance. And located here and also on the webpage are the different SLOs for weight training. So here are some of the benefits of resistance training. We increase lean mass. So theoretically, we are building muscle. Not that that swollenness is your goalness and size is the prize. It also helps to decrease fat mass because the more lean mass you have, and it increases your metabolism if you don't have that increase in your caloric intake and other hormonal responses, then you actually lose body fat. It helps us strengthen bones and connective tissue, which is especially good as we age, and also for females or upper body, because with weight bearing, you don't have to worry about your legs, but upper body is a little bit different. It helps you to manage stress in a healthy manner. It can increase your metabolism. It certainly can increase your metabolism with post-exercise oxygen consumption if the exercise is intense enough. It can decrease your heart rate and pulse, and blood pressure, and also increase muscular endurance, increase the ability of muscle to recover, because part of training is adapting your muscles to the load and therefore the recovery phase. It decreases the risk of type 2 diabetes, slows the aging process. If you talk to people who do master's level track and field, You will hear them talking about when you see a master's level sprinter, add 10 years to the way they look. If you see a master's level distance runner, subtract 10 years from the way they look. I'm not making that up. That's what master's level people talk about. Helps to improve your posture. That's assuming that you have good posture and you have a good resistance training program where you're pushing, pulling, hinging, squatting, loaded carries, and rotating. There's positive changes in blood lipids, increased coordination and balance. Again, if you're doing dynamic types of exercises like we are in class, and dynamic not doing Olympic lifts, but like the deadlift and some of those other items. If you're using machines, that does not help coordination or balance. It can improve your self-confidence, and there's many other ones that go along with that, such as increasing your work capacity. We've talked about this in the first three presentations. So there's health-related physical fitness, which determines how healthy you are. So there's muscular strength and muscular endurance, which is also sometimes paired together, called muscular fitness, cardiorespiratory endurance, flexibility, and body composition. By working your muscular strength and endurance, you're also improving your heart. Again, if you are keeping it up, doing the amount of work that you need to in class, that will help your cardiorespiratory endurance and have a strong heart as well. We're not looking for cosmetic fitness. We want to incorporate physical activity in our entire life, not just, oh, I'm going to exercise now and then be inactive the rest of the day. So looking at muscles, the smallest contractile unit of a muscle fiber is called a sarcomere. And there's a video on the webpage on D2L that goes through and talks about the different parts. The guy is one of those people who draws and talks about that. But this is a sarcomere. So you in your muscle fibers, you have many of these stacked on each other. And what happens, he talks about this, we have the sliding filament theory where the actin and myosin slide over the top of each other. So a muscle can only contract or allow it to relax. That's how movement is created, by being attached across a joint and in opposing pairs of muscles. So we have different types of muscle actions. Concentric is when the muscle is shortening. So if you're doing a bicep curl here as the example, when that bicep contracts, you're quote unquote making a muscle. When I taught junior high, I used to have my students would be like, Mr. Weed, can you make a muscle? And I'm like, already made. And I'm like, flex a muscle. And so what I would do is I would bend my knee back, which is flexing my knee. But they really can't see that. They're talking about the bicep brachii muscle that they were looking for me to show them. So in concentric, the force of your muscle overcomes the resistance. So in this situation, the biceps here are pulling on your radius is overcoming the weight of the dumbbell here. So force overcomes resistance. And again, when you're squatting, that is when you're coming from the squatted position or the hinged position and standing up tall. So when you allow that to go, that is the eccentric. And if you do the eccentric, which is the next slide here, that's where you get more muscle pain and soreness. So here is the biceps brachii again. And so this is, you're allowing the dumbbell to come back to full extension, so to fully extend the arm. And that is eccentric. That is where the resistance overcomes the force. You're allowing that to happen. That can also be used in forced repetitions and what are also called negatives or eccentric training. And you're 125% stronger eccentrically than concentrically. If you know individuals who are older, they might have great difficulty in standing up, but they can flop on down. So you can control that on the way down and get back up. Remember, the sitting and rising test, there's a reason why we do that for you. There's also this thing called isotonic training, which is dynamic constant external resistance, where the force overcomes resistance. Most of the work that we are doing in class would be isotonic with the exercise that we do. Isometric would be a plank. So there's no change in the angle or force. So the force equals the resistance. And then isokinetic is where you need to have a special machine, which we do not have. And usually that's used for scientific testing. So is there a quiz on D2L currently open for you to take as many times as you want and get a score over the basic information? The answer is yes, there is. So make sure you take that. For the types of muscle function, so I was talking about opposing pairs. So if in that bicep curl, going back there, the biceps brachii here is the prime mover, also known as the agonist. The triceps, which is on the back side of the arm, is the antagonist. And so when this bicep is contracting, the triceps here is relaxing. It has to. And then you also have some different stabilizing joints around here, the shoulder, the forearm, which helps to keep the joint in place so it's not flopping all over the place. And then you can also get synergistic muscle action when you have other muscles that contribute to the prime movement. And that's what we are looking for as much as possible in free weights, not necessarily machines. So if you're doing a bicep curl, the prime mover is the bicep and the antagonist is the tricep. If you're doing a cable crossover tricep push down or a dip, you are using your triceps as the prime mover and the biceps is the antagonist, allowing the movement. If you talk to softball and baseball throwers, they talk about the ratio between the strength of your biceps and your triceps. Because when you throw the ball, if you can imagine someone throwing a ball, you need your biceps to slow the arm down when they release the ball so that you don't damage your elbow. When it comes to resistance training, weight training, there are 5 different sources of resistance. One of them is gravity, which is around us on the planet Earth, 365, and you have to be able to overcome gravity to move well. So we're constantly in a state of gravity, so we have to produce overload to overcome that because our body has become acclimated to it. But if we're physically inactive, it's harder to move our body in gravity. We have inertia, so a body at rest tends to stay at rest and a body in motion tends to stay in motion. So when you are starting the exercise, the initial movement usually takes more effort because the weight has gone from a dead position where it's not moving to moving. There's also friction. So you don't want to work out on ice because there's very little, unless of course you have ice skates on. But depending if you're using a machine that's not oiled well, then that creates greater friction. Or if you're doing some sort of sled pull or push, the greater amount of friction on the floor transferring to the device makes it more challenging. There's fluid resistance. I don't know if any of you have ever run in water, but it's much more challenging to run in water than out of water. Just like when I was coaching, we used to drop hurdles in our swimming pool and we would work on technique because it slowed it down, but they could feel that. And then there's elasticity as well, and that's why we have elastic band activity as one of those forms of resistance. In real life, we have Earth's gravitational pull. We have 360 degrees of freedom. We have the frontal, sagittal, and transverse planes of movement. We have our biomotor abilities. So which do you think is more likely to replicate our actual life? Is it weight machines or is it free weights? I'll wait and answer that in the next presentation. So remember, I talk a lot about technique, about those cues. They never change. If you do imperfect reps, then we reinforce imperfect performance. So this is one of the phases of the Turkish get. I don't know if he's coming up or coming down. But you see there's relatively a straight line through here. This knee might be a little bit closer to the hand. This is here, and he's looking up at his shoe on his hand because it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And then the last slide, I believe, besides the review, why are some people more muscular than others? Well, there's a number of reasons. One of those reasons is genetics. So look at your mother and father, and you're probably a combination of those two, or more like one or the other, or a grandparent, depending on what your genetic predispositions are. Gender, for males and females, males tend to have more testosterone, therefore they tend to have more muscle mass. But that doesn't mean that every male is stronger than every female. If you've ever watched the women's CrossFit games, there are some very strong women there. What is your training age? So if you count all the time that you have trained for a specific activity, whatever that is, whether it was a sport or resistance training. I got my first gym membership as a Christmas gift when I was, I believe, 14 years old, and it was like 3 months. So my mom and dad had to take me, myself, and my friend, or his parents took us to the gym. It was fairly close to where we grew up. It was called Indian Springs Recreation Center. Now it's called the Hempfield Rec Center. Still exists. I was lifted there when I was going to visit my mom and dad. Um, it hasn't changed very much, sadly. But yeah, so that's where I started training many, many years ago. And I've been consistent for the past 30 plus years. This TED Ed talk is a video that's connected on the webpage, and we've already seen that. That's where the guy's eating carrots, and that's not really protein filled. What does your nutrition look like? Are you maximizing that with protein intake, and how's that with your hormonal response? And then are you using some sort of performance enhancer, your P's, um, to do that? So there's a variety of reasons here why that happens. Just like muscle attachment. People have different muscles attachments, so they look a little bit different. Probably some of you know people that look like they lift weights and never lifted a weight in their life. And then there's other people that have been lifting weights for a long time, and they're like, oh, so you lift weights. That's usually what I get, which is very disappointing. So, can you identify the physiological benefits of a comprehensive weight training and resistance training program? There are benefits to that for your overall health and wellness. Practice safely the concepts listed and determine how to safely use the sources of resistance. There's also another link there, 5 exercises to avoid. And some of those exercises, unfortunately, we have those machines because I'm not just doing one in the fitness center, but they are there. And you can check out that video. It's very interesting. And when the guy, I think his name is BJ, when he gives the doctor some recommendations, he gives them very high level, and you can see that the doctor struggles with it, going back to Fitts and Posner. Awesome. Have a great day. Move well. Move well.